Welcome to Marketing Speak, a series of interviews and monologues featuring thought leaders and industry practitioners in search engine optimization, e-commerce, and online marketing. Here's your host, Stefan Spencer, SEO expert, author, speaker, consultant, and internet entrepreneur.
If you're a content creator, especially in multimedia formats such as podcasts, live streams, and videos, this episode is for you. Welcome to episode 126 of Marketing Speak. Our guest today is Hani Mourra. He's a dad, softwarepreneur, and the creator of several repurposing software tools designed to help content creators automate the distribution of podcasts and live videos across multiple platforms and grow their audience faster. Hani, it's great to have you on the show.
Stefan, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So we met at Podcast Movement, which is an awesome conference about podcasting, and you're a podcaster. I'm a podcaster, obviously. So let's start with podcasting. Is podcasting the future, or is video the future?
To me, content is the future.
That's a good answer.
Yeah. No, whether you're doing it on audio, whether you're doing it on video, whether you're doing it on both, creating content it's what it's all about. It's where you deliver value to your audience. The platforms help reach different audiences depending on how they like to consume content. But the key is to have good content that people want to listen to and get value out of.
So how do you know if it's good content or it's just kind of mediocre content that you've created?
Just talking to your audience, like getting feedback and being open to that feedback. Whether it's if you have a podcast, if you have people leaving reviews, if you have people tweeting about episodes, tweeting you, and just ask for it. If you're doing videos on YouTube, encourage people, invite people to leave a comment. Some people are going to say negative things, and you got to take that with a grain of salt, but also there's some truth to some negativity as well. But asking for feedback is very, very important. And if you have an email list, if you're either a blogger or a content creator and you have an email list, definitely that's a valuable asset. It's a great way to put out a short little 1-2 question survey, get feedback from your audience, people who are consuming your content, monitor comments on if you have a blog. Those are indicators that people are consuming that content and telling you whether it's good or not, or which direction you should be going into.
Do you solicit feedback through SpeakPipe and have people leave little voicemail messages for you on your website?
I haven't done that myself. I'll be honest with you. I don't have my own podcast. I've been in the software of podcasting for 4 years now, and people always give me a hard time for not having a podcast. And before I got into the software, I've been helping people publish and produce their podcasts. So that's how I got into it.
Okay.
But I've seen a lot of people ask either SpeakPipe or have a phone number that people can call into and leave voicemails. And then what I've seen podcasts, I consume a lot of podcasts. And one of my favorites, when people leave a voicemail, they replay that voicemail and they answer the question or address that topic on a full episode, or maybe address a few topics from listeners within an episode. So people like to hear themselves on their podcasts, especially on their favorite podcasts. So if you encourage people, give them an easy way, whether it's a phone number or something like SpeakPipe, people will do it. People who love what you're doing or enjoy what you're producing and the content you're producing, they'll love to be on your show. And even if they're just asking a question, love to hear their voice on your show.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I know there's some podcasts that are formatted in that very way where they want feedback through voice messages and then they'll play them and then they answer those questions. Like I think Ask Pat is one example of that. Mm-hmm. Pat Flynn's one of his podcasts. So do you have any favorites that are that kind of format?
There's one I listen to a lot. It's over the past year or so I've filtered down to very minimal number of podcasts. And the one I listen to pretty much religiously is Startups for the Rest of Us with Rob Walling. They always invite people at the end of the show to call in this number and leave a voicemail. And what they do I think is really awesome, is they say, if you leave a voicemail versus an email or a tweet, if you ask a question via voicemail, you get a higher priority. So more chance of you being on the show by calling in and leaving your voicemail with your question. And that, to me, as a person who wants my question answered, hey, I can jump the queue by just calling in. And for the people who are creating the podcast, it just gives it more real, there's more people asking questions. There's like a real factor to it. If you hear another person's voice asking a question, as opposed to people, the same voice reading the question and answering it. So
yeah,
I enjoy that part as a listener, as a podcast consumer. I enjoy hearing the questions, hearing other people ask a lot of the questions that I had on my mind as well. So it gives it a nice, unique touch when people call in So I like that feature. And they keep it simple. It's a simple phone number. I'm sure maybe they use Google Voice. I don't know what technology they use. You can use Google Voice or other these voice over IP services where you can get a number and people can call in and leave a voicemail. And you can get the MP3 file and stitch it onto your podcast.
Right, right. Very cool. So I like that strategy of giving a higher priority if they leave a voice message instead of send an email.
Yeah.
That's a powerful distinction there. Let's go back to using surveys, like 1 or 2 question surveys. Like, what sort of software do you recommend, or what approach do you recommend if you want to reach out to your email list and find out what they want?
I am a simple guy. I like to keep things simple. I use Google Forms. It's free. And to me, 2 questions, maximum 3 questions is all you want to ask. You don't want to make it a burden for them. You want to make it something that's easy, something that gives them a chance to leave feedback, but not create work for your audience, because nobody has time to fill out long surveys. So I do a simple Google form. And then if you have an email list, so that's the key. Like, if you have to have a bit of an email list to do this via email. And if you don't have one, it's probably a good time to start one. Start collecting emails through your website where you post your episodes, whether they're YouTube videos, whether they're podcasts. So you definitely want to start connecting with your audience via email and collecting their email addresses.
Yeah. So what size email list is kind of the minimum if you're going to get statistically significant enough results back from your list?
That's a tough one for me to kind of give you a concrete answer, but
well, let's say that you have 2,000 people on your list.
That's plenty. You're going to get some good feedback. And the thing is, you want to know if you're going the right direction or not. Like, I mean, a lot of people are, if they like you, they're going to say nice things about you, but you got to kind of look beyond that and to see, okay, are people saying generic, hey, I like what you're doing, or I want to learn more? Ask things like, what do you want to learn more about, or what topics do you want to cover? So be a little bit specific in your second or third question, just to make sure that the content you're putting out, obviously you're enjoying putting it out as a producer, but is your audience really enjoying what you're putting out, or are you on the right track for what your listeners want to hear? So definitely give people a chance to steer you a little bit. And if you have, don't be fixed on your ways. Like, if your show is about this topic, but your audience is telling you they want to learn more about something a little bit off course, don't be afraid to steer the ship a little bit off and follow what your audience wants.
Yep. All right. And do you recommend incentivizing people to fill out the survey? Like, offer them some sort of ebook or cool digital offering?
That's a tough one. I mean, I've seen people incentivize people to leave reviews early on, and a few years ago, especially, say, hey, we'll give you this if you leave an iTunes review for us. I don't know, that people will do it just for the gift, and you're not getting true value.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of sketchy too, to get an iTunes review for your podcast or an Amazon review for your book by incentivizing. That's probably against the terms of service, and it's I think kind of sketchy.
Yeah, but you want to get real feedback from people who really want to give you feedback. Like, people who listen to the show. Like, I listen to this podcast, and I left an iTunes review. I've tweeted them before. Like, I want to, because I'm a listener and I want to learn more about this topic or that topic, or I want to give feedback as a listener if I'm enjoying the show. So
yeah,
incentivize. I don't encourage it. I like to keep it real.
Yeah, sending an email to your list asking them to take a survey, I think it might require some sort of incentive. Like, I'd give away a digital copy of one of my books, like The Art of SEO or Google Power Search, and that definitely helped get people to take surveys, like 5-question surveys. It's not something that they're really that keen to do. Oh, I got another survey request in my email today. I was looking for something to do. It's like, that's not going to happen. But it's a very different kind of animal to get iTunes reviews. So if you're tracking all the iTunes reviews, not just in the US, but across all the different regions. So if you got a review in iTunes Australia, you're not going to be able to see that if you're in the US. So I sign up for a service called My Podcast Reviews.
Yeah, great service.
Yeah, great service from Daniel, who's actually been a podcast guest on my show, Daniel J. Lewis. Great guy and very smart with podcast SEO. So listeners, by the way, if you're interested in podcast SEO, that's a great episode. I'll include a link in the show notes to that one. Yeah, so I check my podcastreviews.com to see who's commented with something on iTunes about either of my two shows, and it's usually crickets. It's really, really frustrating. So even though I guess that for every 1,000 listeners, I might get one iTunes review. And that's probably a stretch. It might be one out of every 10,000. It's pretty bad. So I've got a handful of really nice reviews, 5-star reviews, and there's nice comments. And I've learned a few things from reading those, but there's not enough data there, even for a show like mine, which is not in the startup phases. I do have a decent amount of reach at this point, having run this podcast now for a couple of years. But I can't rely on that as feedback. I've got to be more proactive with getting survey responses or whatever. And by the way, listeners, if you love this podcast, please do submit a review to iTunes and let me know I'm doing a good job, whatever country you're in. So yeah, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, you want to ask directly. iTunes reviews, honestly, the first, at least up till the last iOS update, iOS 11, even now, it's difficult. Apple doesn't make it easy. If you're on an Apple device to leave an iTunes review, it's a bit convoluted. And there were funny quirks, like if you were already subscribed to the show, you couldn't leave a review. So they made it complicated. So people just got frustrated and probably don't bother. It's already difficult enough for someone to make the time to leave a review, but the actual process itself was difficult. I believe it is a little bit easier now with the latest iOS 11 updates on Apple devices. But you're right. Like usually people leave reviews when they complain about something, when they're really upset about something. And if you're a podcaster, someone listens to your podcast, they're just gonna, if you tick them off or you're not appealing to them, they might just unsubscribe and move on. Right? No one's really gonna take the time to leave an iTunes review to give you really valuable data. So you have to be specific and ask for it. So email, probably the easiest way, like I mentioned earlier, using a form. Google Forms is a free tool. In minutes, you can have 3 questions. What do you like about the show? What topics do you want to hear more about, less about? You keep it very simple and let them speak their mind. So, but of course, this, like we said earlier, you need to have a bit of an email list. So I always encourage people, if you don't have an email list, a lot of podcasters, it's kind of like the last thing on their mind is an email list. They track downloads and listens and subscribers, but email list it's more of a two-way communication, right? You can have an exchange back and forth via email. Someone subscribed to you, you can't really reach out to them except on your next episode, right? So definitely, if you don't have an email list or you're not starting to collect email addresses, definitely something you want to do on your to-do list as soon as possible.
Yeah, and would you recommend also having a Facebook group for your audience?
I've seen people do that. Yes and no. I see a lot of value in Facebook groups. It's a community. You have this community aspect. Plus, Facebook itself is a platform where a lot of your listeners are on, so they don't have to log into anything special. So definitely see value in it. If you're just starting, probably I wouldn't rush into starting a group. It's probably, in my opinion, still email is still more powerful, but it's going to be extra work to manage a group because when you have a group, you got to talk to them. You got to still encourage conversations among members or still give value. So it's extra work for you as a podcaster, as a content creator. But there is value in the long run. But if you're feeling overwhelmed and podcasting itself is overwhelming and there's a lot of effort, a lot of time creating episodes, it wouldn't be the first thing on my list, but it's definitely a strategy I do recommend. But it wouldn't be a high priority for me.
Yeah. Okay. I know, for example, Rob Dion. I think you know Rob.
Mm-hmm.
Open Sky Fitness, yeah. So he has a Facebook group for his listeners, and it's pretty good. It's actually very good. He's developed quite a little community there. I think it's a good strategy. I agree with you. I don't think it's the first strategy I would recommend. Definitely an email list would be a higher priority. The money's in the list, as Frank Kern says. So
yeah.
Now, I'm curious what your kind of methodology is for asking the question. So let's say it's a 3-question survey. Do you subscribe to the kind of the ask method approach of the survey questions to ask and try and figure out what segmentation kind of buckets that people should be in so that you can better target them with your email campaigns? Or are you just trying to make the show better? So you're trying to find out what kind of guests and topics to cover? How do you determine what questions to ask?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, like myself mentioned earlier, I don't have my own podcast. In my example, what I've done before was related to software. Like when I was about to create a new piece of software, I mean, there's a parallel here between creating software and creating some content. I can't recall the exact questions, but my software solved a particular problem in a particular space. So I ask, what kind of frustrations do you have? What kind of things that you wish you can automate? And if you had a magic wand, what would you do with that magic wand to make that frustration go away, or one thing that you do in your daily routine that you want basically eliminated or automated. So that to me was how I would approach my survey for getting feedback on a piece of software that I'm thinking of developing or I'm just starting to develop. For content creators, I would focus on the topics, like ask specifically, what topics do you want to hear more about and what topics you want to hear less about in your particular niche that you're targeting with your audience. So I would leave it open, like ask them what topics and let them spill what's on their mind on that paper. I wouldn't put too many check boxes or guide them a little bit, but let them speak their mind freely.
Yeah, so open-ended questions rather than not so much multiple choice then.
Yeah. I mean, because everyone's going to give you a different answer. You kind of have to kind of merge I don't do it in a systematic way. I do it almost like a visual way. Like when I read all my survey responses, I do take notes on certain words that people use, specific words that people use. But what's the general theme here that I'm getting from people? Are the majority of people, or are a lot of people saying the same thing in different words? And then I kind of use that as, okay, then I should focus on this part of my software. Or in your case, in the podcaster's case, I should focus on this type of content and create more of it. And it's not a one-time thing. You want to be doing this on a semi-regular basis. Obviously not every week, but every once in a while you want to, especially if you do steer a little bit, you want to find out if you are heading in the right direction.
Yep. Yeah.
And I've seen people do it on Twitter as well. Like after a particular episode, say, hey, we tried something new this episode. Tweet us and let us know if you like this style or this type of show. So, you can even do a little call to action on that episode if you decide to mix it up, do something different than your regular routine. Ask people to tweet you back and let you know what they thought about that style or that piece of content or that type of podcast you just did.
Right. So you could make that request via Twitter to your Twitter followers. You could even put it into the episode itself and say, hey, can you take a moment and go to this URL and fill out this quick survey? It'll take you, 1 minute to do, and it'll really help me to determine if the direction I've been taking lately is working for you.
Mm-hmm. Or you can just say, tweet me at Hani Mourra and let me know what you thought of this episode 21. I've seen people do something different just for one episode, for example, as a test. So they do a call to action in the audio and say, hey, tweet me, let me know about episode 21 if you like this new style or not. Be creative. See where your audiences hang out and where you can start hearing about your podcast, where people start talking to you about their podcast, whether it's Twitter. If you have a group, that's definitely a great place to do it. And of course, email as well.
Yeah. So you have a lot of podcasters as your users, as your customers.
Yeah.
So maybe we should give our listeners a bit of a rundown of what your software does. You have actually multiple pieces of software that are relevant and interesting to podcasters. Yeah, let's just do a quick run through.
Yeah, for sure. I've always been focusing on automation and repurposing content. So the softwares I've been working on for, I think it's been 4 years now, 4.5 years, are basically taking a piece of content. So I have one that takes your podcasts and automatically publishes them to your website. And it includes a podcast player as a WordPress plugin. So basically you have blog posts versions of each episode or show notes version of each episode automatically on your website. I have the same kind of tool for YouTube. So people who do YouTube on a regular basis, it's so annoying to go in, make a blog post, copy the embed code from YouTube, paste it. So this WordPress plugin takes all your YouTube videos automatically, and every time you publish a new one, makes a blog post, puts it on your website. And I did the same thing for Facebook Live about 1.5 years ago. So people want to repurpose their Facebook Lives. They want people to consume it on their website. So we did a WordPress plugin for that. And then the latest tool basically almost completes the circle. So a lot of my tools initially were WordPress plugins, would pull data from Facebook Live, podcasts, YouTubes onto your site, onto your WordPress site and make blog posts. this latest tool is called Repurpose, and that takes your content, podcasts, Facebook Lives, and converts them to different media formats and uploads them to different platforms. So, as an example, you can take a podcast audio version and have it as a video on YouTube. You can take a Facebook Live, automatically converted to an audio, and send to SoundCloud. And soon we're adding other podcast hosts as well, like Libsyn. You can repurpose your Facebook Lives onto YouTube to get more reach. So I'm always been in the space where you create a piece of content once, and these tools automatically distribute it to the platforms that you want. It's just been my niche that I just love it. I'm so lazy that I love automating things. So it's just been 4.5 years now. It's been a lot of fun creating these tools.
Yeah, awesome. So there's a tool that's been around for a very long time that's kind of an automation connector type thing called Zapier. And I know a lot of people are big into Zapier, and also If This Then That, IFTT.
Yes, a huge fan of those tools.
Yeah. So did that inspire you to create Repurpose?
Yeah, it did. It really did. Like, I love connecting things. And I thought those tools are fantastic for connecting devices or connecting different platforms, but it wasn't designed for content creators. It wasn't specifically designed for podcasters or specifically designed for people who create videos or live videos on Facebook. So Repurpose was definitely inspired by those tools. It's very, very similar. You connect your platforms, you make workflows, and you decide what you want, what kind of format you want to get converted to, and where you want it to go.
Yep. Yeah. And so Repurpose is your main product these days, but you also had a really cool player for people who are visiting your website and you're a podcaster and you want people to be able to play the episode right within that episode page.
Yes.
What makes your player different from, let's say, just the default player from Libsyn if you're using Libsyn as your podcast media host?
Yeah, first, initially, all these players have improved over time and gotten better and better. But for me, the key, as we talked about it earlier, is the email. Collecting email addresses where the visitor's attention and focus was a very big part of the Simple Podcast Press, which is the player we're talking about. So I've always had an email opt-in box that shows up where the player is located. So you have easy opportunity to collect email addresses. It connects with all the different software like MailChimp and Infusionsoft, all the good stuff. So that's one key differentiator. And then over time, we just made it more visually appealing, and also just the play button. I mean, not on the Libsyn, but on some of the older players, the play button is so small that some people will come to your show notes page or come to your blog post and not even see that it's a player there or not know how to click it, and especially on mobile. Key is listeners are a lot of time listening to podcasts on a mobile device, so your player on your website needs to be mobile friendly. Big play button, easily accessible, easily visible, so that someone can just come in and know this is an audio episode and hit play and put their phone down and listen. So that was one thing. But one of the coolest features that a lot of people just love about Simple Podcast Press is the ability to make clickable timestamps. And this is a unique feature of our player. So as you're creating your show notes page, you can just put in the time 100 or whatever time you want. And it automatically converts that time into a link. And when someone on your site clicks on it, the player will jump to that marker automatically.
Ooh, I love that. That's so cool.
Yeah, summaries, transcripts are great, but even people who come to your site, they want to listen, they want to get a recap. Maybe 5 bullet points that say, here are the 5 key takeaways of this episode. So I was inspired by this idea where people used to put timestamps there. Okay, at the 1 minute mark, we talked about SEO. At the 5 minute mark, we talked about YouTube optimization. But you couldn't click that link. You can scrub the audio and just advance the player manually. But that's how I got inspired by the idea. Like, wouldn't it be cool if you can just click that 1 minute mark and the player will jump to that section of your podcast? So that's what inspired me a few years ago. And that was one of the biggest, newest, or I should say unique features of the Simple Podcast Press.
Yeah. I actually have in all my show notes timestamps, but they're not clickable. Yeah. So maybe it's time I switched over to your player.
And the beauty is that I'm always looking at both sides. I'm looking at the listener's side, but also look at the producer's side, right? No one wants to go in and edit those hundreds of episodes on your site. So as soon as you install Simple Podcast Press, it automatically detects those timestamps and automatically makes them clickable. So you as a creator don't have to do any extra work.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. I think you got a new customer. That's awesome. Cool.
No, I'm always keeping like podcasting, especially podcasting. I find it's more labor intensive than even video sometimes, to be honest. I find that audio podcasts are sometimes more labor intensive than video. So when I design my tools, I keep in mind the producer and also the consumer as well, like whoever's consuming your content.
Yeah, awesome. So with Repurpose, if you're doing Facebook Lives and you're not pushing that out onto YouTube as well, you're really missing out on a big opportunity, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Facebook Live is awesome. Facebook loves live video. They love it when you go live. They give you all the attention. It shows up on the feeds and on people's feeds, and people get notified. Awesome, awesome, great. But then they're kind of gone, right? After a few hours or next day, the feed moves on. You're not on top of that feed anymore.
Right.
And it's very hard to go and search for videos on YouTube. It's not really as powerful a search engine as YouTube is.
Yeah, Facebook's graph search really leaves a lot to be desired. It's not very good.
Yeah, so imagine getting the value of doing live on Facebook, getting all the attention the first day or as you're going live, and then having that piece of content sitting on another platform, YouTube, which is highly searchable, designed for search. Your content lives a lot longer, in my opinion, when it's on YouTube and on Facebook. You get best of both worlds.
Right. So on Facebook, if you do a live video, I've heard anywhere from 2 to 4 times the reach versus a pre-done video that you've uploaded.
Yeah, I don't know if those stats have changed, but when Facebook Live came out, they were really, even now I believe as well, like they're really giving even higher priority than even uploaded videos on Facebook.
Yeah. So Facebook Live, much better than just uploading a pre-made video to Facebook, and definitely leverage something that you've uploaded or something that you've done live on Facebook to YouTube as well.
Yeah, and another cool trick you can do, and I highly recommend for anybody who's using Repurpose right now, is a lot of people maybe are afraid to go live, right? They have videos they made, they put them on YouTube, and of course, we all know, I'm sure a lot of your audience know that Facebook and YouTube, they don't really like each other. So when you embed a YouTube link on Facebook, you're not going to get much love, much attention. So Facebook wants you to upload the video on Facebook, and YouTube obviously wants you to upload the video on YouTube. So you got to do the work twice to really get the maximum exposure for a pre-recorded video. Now with Repurpose, you can set it up so that you can upload the video just to Facebook, a regular video, doesn't have to be a live video. So you get the love there. And then Repurpose will automatically take that video and also upload it to YouTube for you. So you don't have to manually do that step. So a lot of people are trained, YouTube first, like that's kind of your go-to platform. But with Repurpose, you can set it up so that you just have to upload it one place, Facebook, and it'll automatically be on YouTube as well for you. So just cuts your work in half.
Yeah, that's awesome. So are you using Facebook to publish live or pre-recorded videos a lot, or just occasionally?
For me, I do a lot of things in my group. For each product, I have a group, a dedicated group for that particular product, for the WordPress plugin, for the Repurpose. And I started doing training, and I'll admit, I'm not as diligent and consistent as I would like to be, but I found I did a training right on Facebook Live on a particular feature of Repurpose. And that same training went off to YouTube as well. So I found live is just, the idea of live scares people, but the nice thing is going live, it's live. So you can make a mistake. It's okay. Like if people expect you not to be perfect, and you don't have to edit. You just go live. Obviously you got to prepare your content. You don't want to go on here and just babble on for 20 minutes about something you're not prepared for. But the fact that it's live is people are more forgiving. So you have a piece of content, just go live, do it live, and get done. Don't sit there and edit the video and record it and listen to it. And then you're like, oh no, I don't like the sound of my voice. Oh, I don't look good here. Then the content never goes out. So this kind of a hidden advantage of going live is the fact that it's done. Your content is out there to the world, and that's a good thing.
Yeah. So us perfectionists can move on and just get it out there.
Yeah, get it out there. It's better than having nothing. Better
Right.
than having that video on iMovie sitting there unpublished and nobody's consuming that content.
Yeah, there's an expression that goes, perfect is the enemy of done. I really like that, yeah. Here's the thing. There's nothing like SEO to grow your business. It's the gift that keeps on giving. I know this, you know this, we all know this, right? But I see so many people get stuck and spin their wheels some more and get nothing done. Or they finally get something done, but it's the wrong thing and it doesn't benefit their SEO one bit. But what if there were a quick and simple system I could walk you through so that you finally get some traction? Would you be interested in that? If yes, go to marketingspeak.com/challenge for a free 5-day challenge I've made for you because I want you to experience success with SEO. You'll learn some cool tools. You'll get into real action to jumpstart your traffic and sales using easy to implement SEO insider techniques. Again, go to marketingspeak.com/challenge to crush this. Now on to the second half of our interview with our guest. So you're doing these Facebook Lives showing features of your software. You're publishing these to your various private groups on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Are you doing these as screencasts or talking head videos? You're doing it from your phone, from your computer? Like, how are you doing these?
Yeah, I'm doing it from my computer. The last one I did was Ecamm. I use Ecamm software. They have, I think it's called Ecamm Live.
Yeah, Ecamm Live for Facebook. And I'll include a link in the show notes. Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. If you're fortunately or unfortunately, it's a Mac only product. But the two platforms I highly recommend to go live are if you're on Mac and you want to do desktop software, like something from your computer, definitely check out Ecamm Live. It's very inexpensive. And you can do both. Like I start off with myself talking, and then I jump into a screencast and demo the feature or teach about that one feature. So it gives you the flexibility to do both screencasts and like screen sharing and talking head. If you want more powerful features, check out BeLive.tv. Great community there. Great bunch of people. I've met, I guess, one of the founders when they first launched, and they got an amazing product. And they released the feature where you can have two people, basically interview style, on Facebook before Facebook made that option available. And even now, Facebook lets you do it, but it's not as elegant as BeLive.tv. So BeLive.tv is a great platform for going live, and definitely check that out. But there is a monthly subscription. It's not a one-time software.
Yeah, so if you pay the monthly subscription, the branding, the BeLive branding, that doesn't have to be there, because that's one thing that kind of turned me off initially. It was free when they first launched, and a lot of people were using it and had that really aggressive branding for BeLive on the video, and I didn't like that.
It didn't look good. Yeah, no, once you go pro, or I don't know what they call it, once you pay for the subscription, then the branding's gone, and they're adding more and more. I think, don't quote me, I think you can do screen sharing now. You can have 3 people, I think. Like, they're one step ahead of, well, several steps ahead of what you can do with your native Facebook, like going live just with your Facebook browser on your computer.
Right. And what about Wirecast?
Wirecast is a beast. It's a beast. I've tried it. And even me as a technical guy, I got intimidated by it. And I might have done a test once, but then I didn't bother. It's, if you enjoy tinkering and you're very techie and you want it, it's definitely a great tool. But no, I take it back. Not Wirecast. I played around with OBS, which is Open Broadcast Software. That one was very complicated. Wirecast, I haven't tried myself.
Okay, so Open Broadcast System, OBS, is that a free product? It's like open source or something?
I believe so. I believe it's a free open source product. So there's a lot of add-ons you can get, but I found it very difficult. Again, this is about 1.5 years ago. I haven't messed with it since then. It might have gotten easier, but again, I would do the shortest path to success. Whatever's simple and bloat free, like nothing that's gonna like bog down my machine or complicate the setup to the fact that I'm nervous to go live because I don't know if it's gonna work or not. With Ecamm, with BeLive, you just fire it up and you go. You focus on the content, which is the key to all this, right? It's getting your content out there, not the technology behind it.
Right. So I'm a paid user of Ecamm Live for Facebook. I like it, but there were some shortcomings with it. I wanted to do my podcasts as live videos, so I tried an episode like that. And the only way that I could have the sound come through of both sides is to let the audio come through the speakers and for that to get picked up. And I'm like, yeah, that's not gonna work for me. And they're like, oh,
No.
well, we're working on it. We'll come out with a new version at some point that will address your particular issue. And then I moved on. I stopped doing live broadcasts of my podcast episodes. And now I've just bought Wirecast, so I'm excited to try that out. I did hear that OBS was kind of clunky and hard to operate, but Wirecast apparently is pretty straightforward, and it's very, very powerful, probably more powerful than OBS, and it's from the same people who make ScreenFlow.
I love ScreenFlow.
I love ScreenFlow too. I use that all the time for making screen recordings, even just for my team. Like, okay, here's what I want you to build or what I want you to fix on my website or whatever. And then I just screen record that and send that to my team, drop it into Dropbox. So, ScreenFlow and Wirecast from the same company, Telestream.
Yeah.
So I'll include links to all these different tools in the show notes. Yeah. So screencasting, definitely a cool way. If you have software or you have stuff you want to demonstrate, like for me as an SEO consultant, I want to show off cool SEO tools that I use and critique websites, the SEO of websites, and show my thought process and the kind of tools I use, and doing screencasts for that. And then even Facebook Living it and YouTube Live as well, I think is a pretty cool strategy.
Yeah. And you can teach. I've seen people do really cool things, like take their iPad, especially the new ones, the iPad Pros or whatever, with the pencil, or their tablet with a pencil, and they can basically, whatever's going on their iPad, they can put it on their screen and broadcast that. So they're basically, drawing, sketching, doing flow diagrams, whatever, teaching, but by sharing what's on their iPad screen. And with the fact that you have a pencil and you can draw things, it looks cool. And it's a great way to teach without having to just be a talking head or just showing. If you don't have anything necessarily to show on a screen, but you can use your iPad to draw and, demonstrate a point. So yeah, definitely teaching using some kind of screen sharing. It's great. I love it.
Yeah. Taki Mourra, who was a guest on this podcast, he uses that approach of drawing on his iPad when he's giving webinars, even when he's at a live event teaching, up on stage. He'll do that. He'll draw instead of using. No, he'll use a whiteboard or a flip chart as well. But he loves using this. I forget the software that he uses to do this. It's an app for iPad and iPhone. But yeah, you just start drawing on it, and it's got different kinds of pens and markers and color palettes and all the cool tools and everything. And you can draw frameworks and things. You could scribble notes out for the person on your live video or attending your webinar. Do you happen to know any software that does that? I can't remember the name of the app that Taki uses.
There was one called I think it was called Pencil. I'm not sure that's the one he uses, but there's an app called Pencil on the iPhone, iPad. There was another one. Top of my head, I can't think of it, but it's just a great way to teach, right? Sometimes drawing on a whiteboard is the best way to teach, but you don't have a whiteboard when you're doing a webinar or you're doing a Facebook Live. So hooking up your iPad or phone to your computer and broadcasting that screen is a whole new dimension. People, I don't know, I find it intriguing as someone who I'm watching something, I see somebody drawing and they're teaching me something. I tend to, when I'm scrolling my feed, stop and watch. Because, this is different. Not just another talking head.
Yeah, it's definitely notable. It creates intrigue for the viewer or for the visitor or the Facebook user who's scrolling through their feed. Also, I think having some real interaction or visual stimulus happening, like in the background at the beginning of the video, is really important too, rather than just the talking head. Let's say you're holding your phone and you're kind of spinning around so people can see different perspectives of your background, I think is really important.
I noticed you do that. I've noticed a couple of your Facebook Live.
Yeah.
How at conferences and stuff, it catches my eye because you're dynamics. There's motion. There's things happening, right? I'm like, oh, what's going on here? Let me stop and see. And I know Taki Mourra does it himself. He's always out in places where there's beautiful scenery in the background. He's walking around and he's talking. He's sharing something. And it always catches my attention. I notice the background. I notice things moving. And no, that's a great tip.
Yes, I do love that. So I'm going to figure out what that app is, whether it's Pencil or something else, and I'll include that in the show notes. So let's talk a little bit more about Facebook and YouTube not liking each other and how you can kind of get around that. Like, for example, one thing that I did is I found a YouTube video that I just loved. It was a short talk given by Jonathan Field, and he was talking about how he had gotten tinnitus or tinnitus. It's ringing in your ear, and it wouldn't go away, and it was driving him nuts. Like, he was thinking maybe suicide. It was so bad.
Wow.
And he eventually decided, I can live with it. But it actually was his gateway to mindfulness. He became a big meditator from this as a way to cope. And now it's like it's opened him up in such a beautiful way. He's this mindfulness practice has changed his life. And he's so grateful now that he's got tinnitus. And he gave this talk at, I think it was the Inbound conference. It was so powerful. And I saw that video and I'm like, wow. I had tinnitus myself for about 3 or 4 months, and I got the MRI scan and everything. I was like all freaked out. I got to get rid of this thing. Thank God it went away just on its own. They couldn't figure out there's really no cure or anything for it. Just a lot of times it goes away, but for some people it doesn't, and it didn't for him. He still has it. So I wanted to share this video. It's so powerful, and I was about to post it to my Facebook feed. To my Facebook wall. And I'm like, wait a second. No, this is going to get buried. Facebook hates this because anything that is YouTube is the devil. So they will bury that. Instead, at the time, the Huffington Post was still a good platform to write for. Now they've even shut down all free contributors to that platform. But at the time, it was very effective. So I wrote a short blog post summarizing the key points about the video. Essentially, I took the 3 paragraphs that I had written for the Facebook post to go with the video, the YouTube video, and I'm like, okay, let's make it 5 paragraphs, and that'll be a short blog post. I'll embed the YouTube video in that blog post, that Huffington Post article, and then that's what I'm going to post to Facebook. The Huffington Post article did really well on Facebook, and it was kind of a workaround for the fact that it was going to be a YouTube video that would have gotten buried otherwise.
That's brilliant, actually. That is brilliant.
Yeah.
good thinking. No, that's awesome. You took the time to do that.
Yeah, and you never know whose lives are going to be changed because you put that extra effort in and you shared something that was important and impactful for you that might be impactful for others. Let's move on to other topics here. So let's say that you want to do some promotion of your podcast. So you've got a lot of podcasters as friends, as customers, users, and I'm sure you've seen lots of strategies for getting podcasts out there, and doing a Facebook Live would be one of them.
Yeah.
We just talked about how you might do that with something like Wirecast or whatever. But what other promotion strategies have you seen that have been effective or seem to be effective in terms of getting podcast episodes out there?
The default, what most people do is take a podcast episode, they create the show notes on their site, the blog post or show notes, whatever you want to call it. And then, they share that out to social media like Twitter, Facebook. They share the link to their blog post. Definitely a good strategy. Definitely that's kind of the default, what everyone's doing. And what a lot of people are doing now are sharing audio snippets, basically snippets of audio converted to a video, and they're posting those as videos on different platforms. Twitter, maybe like a 30-second clip you see in a little waveform. You probably, most of you have probably seen them if you're following a certain podcast, but you see a little static picture on some waveform, like some animated piece of audio waveform moving around, and a little title, maybe a little quote from the podcast episode, and then they share that out as a video natively uploaded to Twitter. And I haven't seen much on Facebook, maybe a few on Facebook, but mostly Twitter I see it. And then they link back to their show notes page for that particular episode. So it's like a teaser, what to expect, and link back to your show notes. Now, whether it's effective or not, I can't really say. I don't know. I see a lot of it. I think it's cool. I think it's great. With Repurpose, we are working on something similar as well. There's a lot of tools out there that do this. We're also adding that functionality to Repurpose to share snippets out there. In terms of effectiveness, it's hard for me to say because I haven't I don't have any metrics myself on the data.
Yeah, so Repurpose does the entire episode right now. So it does the audio
Correct.
waveform, kind of a cool video effect with the still image as a background, as a backdrop, and then the audio plays, but for the whole episode. So that's one of the features of Repurpose.
Correct.
And you have customers like big shows that are doing this, like John Lee Dumas, who actually was a guest here on this podcast with his Entrepreneur on Fire podcast. He publishes his episodes using your software to YouTube in this way. Daily.
YouTube and Facebook. So you can actually upload as a native video to Facebook as well with using Repurpose. So it's another Facebook likes uploaded videos as opposed to YouTube videos. So uploading a native video to Facebook and YouTube is what John does for EO Fire. And what a lot of our customers, what we recommend is to getting it on both platforms.
Yeah. Okay. And do you know if he gets better results on Facebook or YouTube, or would they be about the same?
I would just, again, this is just by looking, not like analyzing full data. From what I see from on his channel, Facebook gets more views compared to YouTube for the same episode. But saying that though, I mean, I think the way YouTube determines a view is different than the way Facebook determines a view. I think
it's pretty easy to have a count as a view on Facebook. Essentially, if it's like 3 seconds of it playing while you're scrolling through your news feed, it counts as a view.
Yeah. So, but the whole idea of having your content out there is not to give a boost to. You're not going to get like a whole rush of new people listening to your content. It's just you're going to get that extra exposure on a channel that people hang out on. I think more people hang out on Facebook. Like hang out, meaning they're scrolling their feeds on Facebook as opposed to scrolling a feed on YouTube. So having it on there on a place where someone can just scroll, might catch their attention, they would click play or just pause and it'll start playing. They can consume that content without leaving Facebook, which is a really awesome way to discover somebody new. You're not going to get a ton of people, but you're going to get people who are going to discover you. But what's really cool now, you probably notice it on your phone, you're watching a video on your phone, even your desktop, I think, on Facebook, that video can stay on the bottom right and you can keep scrolling. So you can actually watch a video and listen to the audio while you're still scrolling your feed. So Facebook is making it easy for people to consume their video while they're still doing what they intended to do, which is flick their thumb and just keep scrolling. That's what Facebook wants you to do.
Well, I think that's a really critical point for our listeners to understand is that anytime you keep the user on Facebook, you get rewarded for that. And every time you try and drive the user off of Facebook onto your own site, whether it's some sort of opt-in landing page type thing or whatever, download an ebook, anything like that, you are going to get penalized, not penalized, but you're not going to be rewarded as much by Facebook because they don't want that behavior. They want people to stay on Facebook for hours.
Yes. No, I'm glad you brought that up. That's exactly right. Like, I'm glad I was thinking that, but I'm glad you brought it up to the audience because especially people, they get annoyed when they click on something. They're on Facebook for a reason, right? They're casually scrolling or they're looking or, getting up to date on what they wanted to do. They don't want to leave Facebook. And definitely Facebook wants them to stay on the platform. So if you can allow them to consume content without leaving the platform, that's a huge plus for you.
Yep. Yeah, and the users, they're just like on autopilot, like they're in trance, just getting dopamine hits by scrolling. And it's like, oh, where did those 2 hours go by?
I don't know how they do it, but I'm like, I find like, what am I doing? I don't even know why I'm scrolling on Facebook. I'm not looking for anything. I'm just scrolling away. It's such a powerful platform where it can get you hooked without you even knowing it.
Yes, well, it is kind of evil that way. One tip for productivity is just if you are needing to check if you got any messages coming in from Facebook Messenger, don't even go to Facebook. Go to messenger.com on your computer instead of facebook.com.
Oh, okay.
So it bypasses the news feed and just goes right to the Messenger interface.
Oh, that's smart. That's a great tip.
I never go into Facebook if I just need to go into Messenger and send a message or check if somebody replied or not yet. Yeah. So What about Instagram? So you mentioned Twitter, these audio snippets with the waveform video thing is very effective on Twitter, or you've seen them quite a lot on Twitter, but what about Instagram?
I've seen them on Instagram. I mean, I personally don't hang out on Instagram that much, but I do see them on Instagram. I think kind of one disadvantage of Instagram is the links. You cannot have links in your post. So you can have links in your profile, I believe. Again, I'm not an Instagram expert. I hardly use it. But from what I hear is you can't put links when you upload a video or you post a picture. You can tell people, hey, go to my profile to get the link to my latest episode. So you can have like a redirect in your profile, say, click here for my latest episode. But, it's a little clunky. You got to send people from one to the next to click through to your site. But it's definitely a great way for people to consume content. People who are on Instagram, they can click and get a teaser. And if they like what they heard, they'll find you. They'll find a way. Because you do some branding on that video. So keep that in mind. You are doing branding. You upload your own image. So you can decide how you want to brand it. So you can say, available on iTunes. And you put your podcast name. So somebody who really wants to, even if there's no link, they'll discover you and they'll find you through your branding on your videos. So definitely Instagram is another one to explore. What I always tell people is just try a few things, see where you get a little bit of traction and kind of focus on that. Don't dilute yourself in your efforts trying to be everywhere, especially if you're doing it manually, because a lot of these tools, you got to do it manually. So just be careful. Don't get caught up in the fact, this episode, I didn't create the snippet for episode 23 on Instagram yet. Or, you can get overwhelmed as a content creator, as a podcaster, because there's a lot of steps. And if a lot of people outsource, of course, it's always good to outsource, but don't get caught up in all the channels. Just focus on where you're getting feedback, where you're getting comments or people retweeting or people interacting with you, and do more of that.
Yeah. And use tools to help you kind of semi-automate this or completely automate it. Like, for example, my team uses Hootsuite to send out the inspirational images with quotes from the episode onto not just Twitter, but also Facebook and LinkedIn and so forth. So use technology to help you to scale this, because trying to do this all manually is really painful.
It's painful and it distracts you, because really the bulk of the effort is in coming up with the content and creating it, whether it's a video, whether it's an audio. And then I find that if I know I have a long checklist of things I have to do after I create my content, it's almost discouraging me from even creating the content in the first place, because I'm like, well, besides creating the content, I got to go do this and then Instagram and then Twitter and then Facebook and then video. And then it's like, it's discouraging.
Yeah. A little overwhelming. Yeah. So we're about out of time. So for my last question, what are some techniques or strategies for repackaging, repurposing that we haven't already talked about that you think is really cool? Like, for example, taking a listicle type of article and turning it into a SlideShare deck, uploading that to SlideShare, or taking a listicle kind of article and turning that into an infographic using a tool like Pictochart to create the infographic. Like, do you have any repurposing, repackaging tips that we haven't already covered?
The one that seems to be interesting, I don't know if a lot of people are doing it, and I even heard of Amazon doing it in an automated way, is to literally take your blog post and read it as a audio format. So I've heard of a tool through Amazon, I don't know if it's still in beta or not, or a service through Amazon that you can automate. I don't know if it's called Poly. I could be wrong, but basically you can take your written text, read it out loud as an audio file, and allow someone to listen to it on your site. So I signed up for their beta. I don't know if I got approved yet or not, but I haven't checked my email in a while. But I don't know if I'm in, but it sounded really interesting. So that even if it's not automated, if you read your blog posts, again, not every single blog post is going to work as an audio format. But if you do have an interesting piece of content, take that, turn blogs into audios. And to me, the standards are taking your podcasts and whatever content and making them into blog posts. But not many people go the other way. So if you have content you've already created, definitely do that. Take the ones that get a lot of comments or a lot of feedback, or the ones that have a lot of interest, and then make a blog post, make an audio podcast episode out of that blog post. That's one thing I've heard people talking about, but not as much as the other way around.
Yeah, that's a cool, very outside the box sort of thing to do. I've created for the first time, I've had 3 books published by O'Reilly, and now I've finally done an audiobook after all these years. And
nice.
It's Google Power Search 2nd edition.
Okay.
Now has an audiobook. So you could listen to that in your car or whatever and learn how to become a Google Power Searcher, find anything like Forrester research reports that cost thousands of dollars, competitors' business plans, and all sorts of stuff that you would think, how the heck could this be online and available inside of the Google search engine? But it is. Yeah, so that's now an audiobook. And why not take it to another level and take your best blog posts, your best other written content, besides if you have a book, like as an author, and turn that into kind of mini audiobooks. That's a really cool idea. So I know you can't really recall off the top of your head that Amazon tool name, but since you signed up for the beta, I'm sure it's somewhere in your email or something. Can you send that to me? And then I will include a link to that service. Maybe there's still a beta sign up or whatever. I'll put that in the show notes.
Absolutely. Yeah. As soon as I find it, as soon as we're done here, I'll get it to you to include in the show notes. It looked really interesting. Who knows how well it's going to work, but the idea of having audio content on your blog without you having to do the extra work of recording it sounded very intriguing to me as the person who likes to automate. Yeah.
You could even take that audio content and publish it not just on your blog, but in your podcast.
As its own podcast or as an episode on your existing podcast.
Yeah.
So much you can do. Another area that's really interesting is this. I'm not very immersed in this, but Alexa has this thing called Alexa briefings. I've been hearing about. So basically you can submit little mini audio podcasts to Alexa and people can add them to their daily briefing. So every morning someone, hey, Alexa, can you give me my news today? If someone subscribed to your briefing, that your content, typically short snippets of audio, comes up in there automatically. So you're on someone's Alexa that will, play your audio podcast for your subscribers. So anybody who's already got a podcast wants to repurpose that or to shrink it down to smaller snippets and, look into Amazon Alexa briefings, I think it's called.
Awesome. Love it. All right. Those are some definite outside the box ideas and strategies. Thank you so much. So if somebody wanted to sign up for Repurpose, I think you have a free trial. What's the process for them to?
Yeah, you can sign up for a free trial. You can publish 4 episodes, any kind of episodes you want, whether it's podcast to YouTube, podcast to Facebook Live to podcast. We have different workflows. You can just head over to repurpose.io and then you can sign up for a free trial. You can try it out. Been getting a lot of feedback, a lot of amazing feedback. It's been about in the public for less than a year now. And last time I checked, 1,600 people signed up. So it's going through, it's getting people, which I like, which means I'm getting good feedback and, we're constantly adding the features that people want.
Very cool. Awesome. And if somebody wanted to contact you directly, where's the best way to reach you, like on Twitter or?
Honestly, the best is if you head over to hanimourra.com, HANIMOURRA.com. On the bottom, there's links to my Facebook and Twitter and my blog. I think my blog is linked there, some of the products. So everything's kind of on one page. It's a one-page site. So yeah, I'm happy to connect with people on Facebook. Facebook and Twitter is where I hang out most. If you head over to hanimourra.com, you can definitely connect with me there, and I'd love to hear from you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Hani, and thank you, listeners. Now, if you want to take some action from this stuff that you've learned in this episode, go to marketingspeak.com and download the checklist, because every episode we make a checklist of actions you can take that will move your online business or your traditional bricks and mortar business forward just by implementing a handful of these awesome tips and tricks that you've heard in the episode. So that's at marketingspeak.com, along with the transcript and the show notes with timestamps over at marketingspeak.com. We'll catch you on the next episode. Thank you again, Hani. Thank you, listeners. This is Stefan Spencer signing off.
Thanks for listening to the Marketing Speak podcast. Your host has been Stefan Spencer, 3-time author and leading expert on SEO and online marketing. whose client list boasts such brands as Zappos, Sony, and Chanel. Want to learn more about SEO, social media, or just generally how to build an online empire? Visit marketingspeak.com for an archive of past episodes, along with transcripts and show notes. In addition, a wealth of resources that include video-based training, screencasts, webinars, white papers, articles, and blog posts can be found on his SEO coaching site, scienceofseo.com. To reach Stefan, visit his personal website at stefanspencer.com or email him directly at stefan@stefanspencer.com. Until next time.